Good evening, everybody. Today, the board met in executive session at 6 p.m. Here at James Caldwell High School in room 105. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss personnel, litigation, miscellaneous, and old business matters. This meeting has been advertised and is in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act and NJSA 10:4-6, aka the Sunshine Law. The matters discussed will be made public when confidentiality is no longer required, and formal action pursuant to the said discussion shall take place only at a meeting to which the public has been invited to. Our public conference meeting is starting at 7:01 in the cafeteria. The Board of Education meeting will be streamed live. All community questions and comments will be welcomed in person. The Caldwell-West Caldwell Board of Education public conference meeting is in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act and NJSA 10:4-6, aka the Sunshine Law. Notices have been sent to the Progress, Caldwell, New Jersey, and the Star Ledger, Newark, New Jersey, and Tap into West Essex. Notices also have been posted in the Board of Education office, Harrison School Building, Gray Street, West Caldwell, New Jersey, and have been delivered to the clerk, Borough of Caldwell, and the clerk, Township of West Caldwell, for posting. Now starting our meeting, Brian, can we have the roll, please?
Yes. Student Representative Taya Fiore.
Here.
Ms. DiMartini.
Here.
Ms. Landolfi Jefferson.
Here.
Ms. Mack.
Here.
Mr. Diambola.
Here.
Ms. Grosso. So we have 4 voting members present. We have a quorum.
All right, can we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Brian, were there any communications?
There were none.
Superintendent report.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Our first presentation on the superintendent's report this evening will be our representative from Brett Sumption Architects. Thank you, Greg.
Good evening, everybody. It is nice to see all of you again. I am here this evening to once again present on the upcoming referendum. I trust Josh was doing a nice job in my absence. I will go and tell him that. By way of background, the Board of Education presented a referendum several months ago because they had debt rolling off. And so they took a very financially responsible approach by taking necessary projects that were in need of attention and backing into the amount of money that was rolling off. And so the taxpayers saw no additional tax impact to what they were paying, and those projects were supported by the community and ultimately are being worked on as we speak. The second question in that referendum was to make improvements to the athletic center, which we heard over the course of many months in planning and meeting with community members and others that there were people that were back here in school decades ago, and that facility has remained unchanged in that period of time. That second question was not successful, and it was from what we heard from the community members it was felt to be more than was needed. The proposal was to replace the existing with a 2-story. So the board heard the community and directed us to revisit that project and to bring it back into a smaller scale that the community articulated to us over the course of meetings and months. The goals remained the same, and that was to take an antiquated athletic center that was undersized, that only accommodated one sport, and it was only a boys' sport, football in particular. There was no room in the building for anybody else. The restrooms were undersized, not ADA compliant, and porta-johns, which you can see in that picture, were used. And we heard from many community members that they literally go home to avoid using the restrooms during halftime, or that their student athletes, or even during physical education class, had no place to go to use a restroom, or if they had any other needs or requirements. So the goal is to modernize it, to make it code compliant, and to create facilities for both the men's and women's sports and physical education departments remained the same. Currently, as I mentioned, the locker room only had men. They were old and small, the restrooms, not barrier-free compliant and not modern by any stretch, and the proposal has all of those things being addressed. This is an aerial view. The track and the field are probably very recognizable, and if you look in the lower right-hand corner at approximately 4 o'clock on the screen, the blue highlighted area is the footprint of the existing athletic center, and the red outline is the current location of the athletic center, and so our proposal is the blue outline on the screen that pulls away from the field a little bit and also increases the footprint to accommodate all of the objectives that I had mentioned earlier. The green area is a retention basin that is required by New Jersey stormwater regulations, and part of this improvement required the shot put area to be relocated, and that's what you see at 6 o'clock on the screen. The floor plan, which you have now seen many, many times over many, many months, remains the same as presented. The blue areas are the locker areas and the restroom areas for the students, and whether it's physical education or a sport. The left side has 2 facilities or 2 team rooms accompanied by a coach's office and restrooms for those athletes and physical education students, and the right side has the exact same spaces in square footage and configuration, and that is the women's side. The discussions post-referendum will continue about finishes and allocations and the number of lockers and things like that, but in general, the layouts accommodate quite a bit of flexibility and will allow multiple teams to use the building, for physical education to use restrooms, and a host of other things. In the middle, the green area are public restrooms. Each is multi-fixture, and we have a family gender-neutral restroom in the back, and in the front, the pink area is a custodial closet to allow for cleaning supplies and the like. All the way to the right of this plan is a tan space, which is storage. That is obviously one of the discussions that took place during the design. So sports will be given areas within that storage room, as will physical education, to allow them to store things there. Up in the upper right-hand corner is a utility room, and then at the far left there is a trainer's area that is incorporated into this building so that it can be near all the sports fields. It does not take the place of the trainer's area in the high school. It is a supplement to that, so that if there is an issue out on the field, whether it's the track and field, whether it's football, lacrosse, even baseball on the far side of the property, there is a trainer's area that is out there closer to the activities. This is a rendering that we created to show what the new Fieldhouse Athletic Center might look like. It was intended to mimic some of the characteristics of the existing high school, and as you can see, it is now a 1-story building rather than the 2 stories that was discussed in the prior referendum. Just to go over some frequently asked questions, the budget for this project is approximately $8.4 million. That is a 50% reduction from the previous one, and this was all driven by the feedback from the community that many supported the idea of replacing this antiquated athletic center, but felt that the much larger and more expensive solution was unnecessary. The athletic center is not just for football. This was a question that came up multiple times. It is for all the physical education students, There was one parent who I don't see today, but who did come out multiple times to share that her daughter has diabetes and needs to have a place just to be able to take her medication, leave her bag, things of that nature. And obviously, sporting events for the community, graduation, and the athletes, both men and women, now have access to a facility. The locker rooms, there is a primary locker room in each side and a secondary locker room. Again, once the referendum passes, we will have ongoing conversations and drill down on some of the design elements that are appropriate once the referendum passes. But the expectation is that the primary locker room can hold 60 to 80 lockers. They will vary in size. There are some requirements for certain sports that will make the locker design very specific. The secondary will have approximately 32 lockers that can be accommodated. And again, these things will be finalized post-referendum. There's always a question about why things cost so much. And oftentimes we'll have someone that has either does construction in the private sector or residential and or maybe doesn't realize certain things that are associated with public schools. But the community that we've shared with them multiple times, the public entity, specifically the district, must comply with prevailing wage requirements. So any contractor bidding this work, whether they are union or not, are paying union rates. You have to be pre-qualified by the state, so there's a tremendous amount of paperwork that goes into becoming pre-qualified, and we explain that as best we can. And then you have, obviously, the ever-increasing cost of construction, and now the newest piece that is shared on a regular basis, the tariffs of various equipment that is coming in or supplies that are coming in. So while at the end of the day it is more expensive, these are the reasons that the public sector projects are so. There was a financial tax impact done by the financial advisors. So the approximate cost is $84 annually on the average assessed home in the borough and $83 on the average assessed home in the township. I believe each have a different tax rate, and that's why there's a subtle difference between each communities. This is the assessed value of your home, which you can find on the tax records in town. This is not the market value of your home. Your home could be 1.5, 2 times what it's assessed at, which just got sold your neighbor, but what you have to look at is the assessed value of the home for the purposes of this calculation, and obviously these projections were based on some presumptions because the board cannot go out for financing until the referendum has passed. I can tell you that the rates are still in the public sector a little bit better than the private sector. I know that in the private sector, while they've come down a little bit, I believe that mortgages are still somewhere in the neighborhood of 7%, maybe even a little more. But these kinds of loans that are being taken out for public entities are more in the range of 3, 4%, maybe a little bit higher. I haven't looked over the last week or so. But again, there's kind of an apples and orange in comparison when you talk about the financing for a public project. Why do you have to vote? We've shared this before based on the last referendum, and the community must vote in order for the Board of Education to borrow money long term. And the concept is that you, number one, couldn't afford to build an $8+ million project out of your annual budget, nor would you want to. You wouldn't buy a house for cash when you could finance it over 20 or 30 years, and you have the benefit of leveraging money long term. And the logic is the same here. You have community members that will buy into your community, and by borrowing money for 20 or 25 years, they will share in the expense of the athletic center that they are benefiting from. So any long-term capital improvement is always beneficial to be borrowing that money long term, and in order to do that, the community must support the board's vision. There's only one question associated with the referendum, but of course you will have other questions as it relates to the November election, because it is also a municipal election and a Board of Education election. So there will be multiple questions on the ballot that have nothing to do with this project, but there will be one separate column that talks about the support of just this capital project, the referendum. It is November 4th. I don't know, and maybe Brian can share the time, the hours that your polls are typically open. I don't know if you know that by heart.
By heart, no, probably 8, probably close at 8, right? 8 o'clock is?
Yeah,
6,
okay. So 6 to 8, and that's on November 4th, and I believe it's where you would normally go to vote during your regular election, so. I feel like a broken record, but I love visiting you folks. So,
We love having you.
Thank you.
are there any questions for me? Gentleman behind you, then we'll go to you.
Good evening. Andy Brown, 13 Burkneen Road in Caldwell. A few questions I haven't heard covered in the past.
Sure.
First, can you walk through the timeline a little bit, assuming obviously the referendum is successful and you get your funding? How's it look as far as going out to bid, breaking ground, and completing the project?
So ultimately, if the when the referendum is successful in November, we have more meetings to have with the coaches, the athletic department, the physical education department, and we have drawings to do. So while we did create some drawing to submit to the Department of Education to get the project approved, the next step is basically the detailed drawings that include dimensions, electrical, plumbing, structural information, et cetera. So that could take upwards of 4 to 6 months, which will take us into the spring. And the other thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to have to coordinate with the athletic department, because at some point, while it only impacts football because they're the only ones using it, we're going to have to work out when we want that to happen. So for example, it's possible that if we take off the football offline in the fall season, then the goal would be to get the project back online for the following so that you're not missing 2 seasons. Conversely, if we want to wait till October or November to start the construction, then we'll have an opportunity to not lose that football season, but we might lose the next football season. That was your one question. Was that the only question?
So, so what are we looking at then for a finish date? Are we looking 2027 then?
So let me do some math here. So we're in 2025, 2020. I would say that the goal right now, without talking about when to take things offline, would be that we could be done by the end of 2027.
So end being?
Let's say
school
December
year
for
or
now. Yeah, no.
December
I would say at the end of December 2027, we could get this done. Obviously, we're going to be working through winter, so weather conditions might encounter some delays. There are some other things that do have an impact on it. The other thing that we could possibly do, and this is going to be a function of tactics, is we could potentially bid the demolition of the building first and as a separate package. Have the site ready while we're bidding the rest of the construction project, and then have a separate contractor come in to construct. We're not going to save anything from this building. It would be opening Pandora's box and to chase something and to try to keep one wall up. There's no savings to be realized there. And so that's another tactic that we talked about, but none of those decisions have been made yet, because obviously we want to make sure that the referendum gets passed before we invest time, money, and energy in that. But I would say right now, and we'll update a schedule once we get past November, because again, we need the input from the board, the physical education department, the athletic department, because that area is going to be blocked off, and there will be some limitations that will prevent people from going into that area during the construction phase.
Okay. And then, let's see, second question, do we anticipate any impact to usage of the football field or the track?
None.
During the?
Yeah, I don't expect any impact on the football field or the track, with the exception that, for example, the shot put, we may need to temporarily move it, or we may, in talking to the board and the athletic department, we may move that first as part of the project to say, look, we want this done right away, so when spring comes, they can still use the shot put, but there will be a fence installed by the general contractor once they are identified to corner off that area. They will use the ingress and egress off of the main road down that little stone driveway. They'll have a staging area there. The football and the track will not be impacted. The field area next door for practices and some of the field events, that might be modified a little bit.
Okay, thank you. And then third question, and this is probably more for the board, and you probably can't give me a final answer now, but is there anticipated usage of the new field house by visiting teams? I think we said, at one point we said no, but I don't know if that's been revisited with the new plans or not.
No, we haven't really revisited that. I guess our first thing is trying to get it passed first, and then we can always discuss that later.
All right,
I did hear something from the athletic director. He said, make them walk, but.
That's my mind.
Yeah, same.
True.
Hello, Liz
Hi.
Hart, 149. How are you?
Wonderful.
So,
missed you.
I know. I missed the last meeting. I was busy working, but anyway. Okay, so I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate.
No, stop.
Also, because I don't have a child that plays football, so you said you were gonna try to avoid the football season, right? So with the demolition, but that's because the football team stores their equipment currently in the field house?
No. So let me clarify.
Okay.
The project in total could take about a year
Okay.
between drawings, permitting, demolition, utility work, all that stuff. When you think about 12 months, we are going to impact one spring season and one fall season.
Okay.
Since nobody other than football uses the building, they will be impacted at some point in the fall.
Got it.
Because nobody uses the building in the spring, I don't believe. Actually, I take that back. Does baseball or anyone use it?
I think they do.
So if baseball uses it, I stand corrected. So baseball will be impacted for one season as well.
Okay.
So they're going to have to probably change in the high school and go out to their respective fields because we have to take the building offline. And to this gentleman's point, we have to barrier free it off so that construction can take place.
Got it.
There's a lot of phasing, so that's what I meant, not because they're storing anything in there in particular, but that nobody, the porta-johns will be moved outside the fence, the bathrooms that are in the building won't be used by anyone, so there'll be a graduation where more porta-johns will have to be come in because those two bathrooms, not that they were ideal to begin with, so that's what I meant, that
Okay.
it's likely that the project could take a total of 12 months, whether it's June to June or January to December or whatever, we impact the season of sports, and so we just need to work around those and do whatever the community, the board, and the athletic department wants.
Okay. Because I think softball uses that field where the big field. right,
Yeah, so
is
they're
fine, right?
actually, I believe, bear with me. Oh, it's over there. Come on. So softball, which one was the laser? Because I turned the TVs off before. All right.
Right. Anyway, right. It's in the bottom left.
So
yeah.
softball won't be impacted
Okay.
because the softball field is down on this end,
Right.
and there'll probably be a fence built somewhere in this area. There, along the track, and then off the back of the property, this will be designated as the area for the construction. Listen, if you have a softball player that's going to knock a ball into that field, I would sign her up to whatever D1
Right.
college you can find.
Liz.
But, other than the shot put, which I said we have to move,
No.
some of those
Temporary.
field events may have to be accommodated temporarily, but the softball field won't be interrupted.
So,
Okay.
Liz, I can clarify that a little more. So right now, that's our JV softball field, and
Okay.
there's not a JV team, so the field's not in use.
Oh.
It would be more of a recreation thing.
Got it. Okay. Cool. One other question.
Yes.
So you pointed out the bathroom, the family and gender neutral bathroom. So it looks like there's only the access to it from the back, right? So if you were to want to use a gender neutral or family, you would have to go behind the building and access it directly from there. I'm assuming there's going to be like proper sidewalks and walkways that are compliant, whatever. right?
Lighting, sidewalks.
Yeah.
Because one of the design features, which we didn't really actively talk about, and I hesitate to push one of these buttons because I know if I not touch the laser, I'll just turn the TV off. But one of the logic is that, as you know, when you have a football game, a lacrosse game, everyone takes the bathroom break at the same time. And so it's like being at a play in New York City. So the logic was that as lines start to form in the front, number one, we don't have doors on the front right now. That'll be a discussion post-referendum because that'll allow adults to hear kids playing, but the line of sight is blocked. So especially post-COVID, that's a nice solution that people don't want to hold the door open for the next group. But the other thing we designed was that after you're done, you'll notice the bathroom is almost designed in reverse.
Right.
Where you'll go to the stall, you'll go to the back, and you'll exit out the back one way. So this way, I'm not trying to get past this line of people. So the design was created where we're sending people out the back anyway
Okay.
during lines. So there will be a sidewalk there. Which can you see it there?
Kind of the hash marks.
Yeah, so the kind of the checkerboard pattern all around, it connects to the sidewalk going around the track, and there's a sidewalk in the front, the side, and the back of the building. So it'll be as well lit as the front. The sidewalks will be as cleared as the front, and the goal is to keep people flowing all the way around so that you'll get accustomed to having that bathroom in the back, the family bathroom in the back. We'll have signage to direct you there, but the whole area will be well lit, and there'll be a lot of traffic back there, so we're not asking a mother or a young kid with an older sibling to go back in the dark to do that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Glenn Roselle. Is this on? Glenn Roselle, 110 Knoll Terrace. My question is, who absorbs cost overruns?
So there can't be cost overruns because there is a finite amount of money that you will approve. And so if we have to cut some things back, then we do that and wait for a future to potentially do some more. But again, right now at this point, we have a contingency figured in, which is partially Department of Education mandated. We have a market escalation component. And so the goal right now is to continue to monitor the market, but the board cannot spend more than the referendum $8.9 million. Now, with that said, the board did keep some capital reserve money that is there in case there are some smaller things that have to be dealt with, but you know, that has to be managed through the process. And so we carry contingencies, we carry market escalation, and we have to make good decisions as we go along. This is a utilitarian building. It's supposed to be an athletic center that serves the students. And so, you know, when we make decisions on things like finishes, which can impact the cost, then, you know, we'll have to be conservative in those decisions.
That's it.
Okay?
Hi, Doug Dirksen, Sylvan Way. It's not that I would feel this way, but I've seen people writing on Facebook, and I just want to ask a question. Because there's a lot of people that say this is still too much money. And $7 a month doesn't sound like it's too much to me. But if you had to strip this down, is it possible to strip it down any further than and still keep the same need, the same way that you're solving the needs that were talked about, which is both male and female?
So for the election on November 4th, no. But if there's an unsuccessful referendum on November 4th and the board wanted to simplify this further, I suppose you could eliminate the storage component, which the athletic group won't love. You could eliminate the secondary locker room in each, which will limit the number of athletes that can use it. So are there some options to reduce it even further? Yes. But again, based on our conversations, my professional opinion is that this is a modern, simplified athletic center that meets the goals and responded to the community's commentary that was, we don't need a second floor with a multi-purpose room.
Right. In other words, to keep the same uses, which is 2 locker rooms for each.
Correct.
Because you have that many sports. It's not like, you know, if you reduced it and took brick out off the front, made it glass or made, I mean, there's
again,
not
we
much
have
to strip out, right?
Those final decisions have not been made. This is a rendering, and we have some thoughts about what it's going to look like. But at the end of the day, right, if you substitute metal panels for brick, it doesn't necessarily move the needle so drastically. And will your building look so out of place in a community and a school, high school, that has a lot of these characteristics?
Yeah, so if it's not going to, if you can't change things like that and you can't change the needs, this is as stripped down as it gets.
Again, I mean, by way of example, right, we would normally recommend a built-up roof system, which is multiple layers. You could go to a single-ply roof and save a few dollars. But in 10 years, the board's going to be looking at the possibility of a replacement roof again. It doesn't provide the protection, so my recommendation would be to not pursue that. But there are some decisions post-referendum that can be made that will guide the decisions of managing the budget. Maybe we throw some ad alternates in there that the bidders can bid. Maybe for now we do the storage room but no storage shelves, and that can be budgeted later. Like, there are going to be some small things, but to your point and question, it is my opinion that this responded to what we heard from the community. It modernizes a much-needed facility, and it meets the basic intent. There's no frills, there's no, over-the-top design elements here that you could just say, oh, get rid of that, there's $3 million.
So if this is looked at as an option A, which is really what the people have to choose from right now, this is a complete option A. This is how you solve that need.
Correct.
What is option B? Let's say this fails.
Well,
so
we're going to go back and have another conversation with the board, because option A in the last referendum was the two-story option, and that was because the board felt, after speaking with the coaches, the athletic director, the physical education, they genuinely felt that their obligation as a board was to present that to the community. This same question was asked that last round. What happens if this? Well, look, right now, we believe this is the best solution. That is what we're going to present to you, and then we'll see what happens. It failed. We got together, and they said, okay, look, we all still agree that there is a need. This 1940s, I think, building is not getting any more modern. It's not getting any safer. It's not getting any better, and we're just going to continue to throw money at it. So, okay, what is the alternative, Greg? This was the alternative that we believe met, quote unquote, the plan B. That there was no formal plan B, because no one wants to negotiate against themselves and say, okay, we have this backup plan. We went back to the drawing board to look at the community feedback, and this is what we came up with. I can't tell you that there's a new option B. If this does not pass, the board may say, okay, the community has spoken, we're not going to do anything. I can tell you that if you're going to go back and you're going to reduce it further, the realities are that the cost of construction is increasing on a regular basis. You might have to spend the same amount of money to get less.
So as an example of that, I agree. Option A is the vote yes right now. Option B, the board is liable to say we're not going to do it for maybe a year, maybe a new superintendent comes in, maybe we'll decide to do it 2 years from now. And then you add in the time to do a referendum.
Right.
You end up with 3 years away before you vote. And the cost at that time, your option B is to spend a lot more money for a lot less.
Or the same money for less.
And that's why you vote yes now, even in the anti-people. I've also seen another question, and this is really to the board. What do you say to people that complain about other issues in the district, like busing and services not provided, special ed shortfalls, and because they see things like that, they say no to this? I think I know the answer, but
You want to take that?
So, first of all, people are always going to have an opinion about something not meeting expectations in a school district. There are a number of different types of funding that we are required to spend on specific things. So the monies that would be generated through this referendum can only be spent on this project. And somebody said to me earlier today, well, we could spend that $8 million some other way. We can't generate that $8 million. Right now, that $8 million is imaginary, because the only way that it becomes a reality is through passing a referendum, as we're hoping to do. And then that money can only be spent. It can't be, let's get this referendum money and then spend it on transportation, or spend it on special education, or spend it on new reading materials. We can't do that. The referendum funds, if they are granted, through this election, can only be spent on this project. We can't even use that money on projects that are going to be going on with the other referendum that was passed last year. It's very specific. So when it comes to responses, to questions like that, we could probably go round and round in circles. But I think people need to understand that right now that $8 million or $8.9 million does not exist. It'll only exist if and when that referendum passes, and no matter what happens, it can only be spent on this project, if we do have it.
And therefore, if they have issues with other things, it really has to be funded from the yearly budgets that you do, and should warrant a lot more involvement in the Board of Education discussions and meetings, so that they can get their thoughts brought out so it can be funded. as part of that. But it's totally separate from this.
Yes.
That's all.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Sure.
Was modular looked at as an alternative to, building it somewhere else and then snapping it together here?
So we did not. That doesn't preclude us from looking at modular as a method of construction because, again, right now this is just a concept and that was presented to the Department of Education for an approval. The methodology of how we want to physically build it will come post-referendum. There are pros and cons to modular construction. One of the cons that we've experienced is modular construction is, just as it states, constructed somewhere else, brought together and kind of plugged and played. And we had a circumstance where it was being transported, hit an overpass, and you're back at scratch to do some things. So nothing is off the table on how to deliver the project. But again, those are typical conversations that will come when the referendum passes, and then we'll start talking about finishes and specific light fixtures and switches and all the details that come along with it. The board had to meet a minimum requirement for the Department of Education submission, which we did. The state doesn't want the board spending money on details yet because they want the referendum and the community to be supportive of it.
I have a question for the board, but it's not about this, it's about something else. Shall I wait until this?
Yeah, yes, please.
Okay.
Just to follow up on that, I think the advantage of modular comes when you have many repetitious functions. All right, and that's when you get it. So if you had a cookie cutter, that if everybody in the state was building field houses with a bathroom setup that looked like that, you could do something very well with modular. But because of that, everyone is just so different, it just doesn't make sense.
Good luck on November 4th. I hope that everything goes as planned and we can come back and further this conversation with details.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Greg.
Okay, the next piece of the superintendent's report this evening, we have our directors of elementary and of secondary education, Alina Jacobs and Jamil Misbahoudin, who are going to present this, the assessment presentation of the spring 2025 tests. So if you recall, last month I was able to give the presentation of the 24-25 school performance report, which carried data from the prior school year. And so now Alina and Jamil are going to give us the most current data that came from the assessments that were administered this past spring. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alina Jacobs, and I'm the Director of Elementary Education.
I'm Jamil Misbahoudin, and I'm the Director of Secondary Education.
We'd like to thank Dr. Fernari, Mr. McCarthy, and the entire board for inviting us to join the meeting this evening to present our annual update on student performance on state assessments and progress towards our 5-year strategic planning goals for student learning. We have many slides to share with you this evening, and we're going to move through some of them at a quicker pace. If you wish to take a closer look at any of this data, the slide deck and the recording will be available on the district website. Highlights from the 24-25 school year include, in English Language Arts, our 6th graders set a new high with a 66% passing rate. On the math NJSLA across all grades, we had our highest ever percentage of passing scores. In 11th grade, we had our highest ever passing rate for the math graduation assessment, and our multilingual students in our ESL program had their best performance on the access test. The first part of our presentation will cover our English Language Arts performance for the 24-25 school year. So this table shows how our students in grades 1 through 6 performed based on their reading levels since the beginning of our strategic plan. As you can see, we've made significant gains over the past 5 years in the number of students reading on or above grade level, according to Teachers College running records. We attribute much of this growth to the implementation of multisensory phonics instruction in grades K through 3 using Foundations and Phonics First, in addition to targeted small group instruction in all of our classrooms. Students in grades 3 through 5 surpassed state averages on NJSLA. Our students continue to make gains as compared to their performance on the prior year's test. For example, our 4th graders reached 66% proficiency, which is 7% higher than the same students performed when they were in 3rd grade.
Here you'll see our middle school data. One thing I'll highlight is that our 6th graders had their highest ever passing rate. It's 7% greater than last year, and 66% overall 6th graders met achievement targets in 6th grade. And then our 9th grade ELA scores, again, continuing to outperform the state. Included in this presentation, and it might be hard to see, we'll make sure to share the slides, are just our passing rates across all grades. The green bars are the 2 highest levels, which are considered passing. So meeting is the light green, dark green is the exceeding. And then on our next few slides, you'll see we're also showing our breakdowns across race and ethnicities, gender, and special programs like our free and reduced lunch students, our 504 students, and special education, general education. This chart, and again, we'll share these slides, so if you can't see them perfectly now, I'll explain it. So this is looking at the same grade, different students. So we're looking at spring 24 and spring 25 and seeing how the same grade of students did. A couple spikes I'll point out. If you see in 4th grade, our 4th grade class in the spring of 25 really outperformed this 4th grade class from the prior year. Also, you'll see that in 6th grade. And then just across all grades, we had a 66% passing rate on the ELA assessments last spring. And then this slide is the same students 2 years in a row. So think of like a 4th grader 2 years ago, and then that same group of students as in 5th grade last year. So just kind of showing how those students kind of progress. One spike we'll call out is the 6th to 7th grade group. So now that's this current year's 8th graders. But 2 years ago, they had their 6th grade scores, and then they jumped up a lot in 7th grade. So we wanted to highlight them on this slide here. The next test we want to talk about is the NJGPA. That's a big test in 11th grade that's part of the state graduation requirement. So students need to pass this test in order to meet their graduation requirement. And in ELA, our 11th graders did very well. They had 94% passing rate, and you see the state was 81%. Again, you'll see these same numbers now broken down by race and ethnicity for the NJGPA, by special program and gender as well. And then also I'd like to share just quickly some PSAT data. These are our PSAT scores from last school year. The passing rates, again, us compared to the state, always outperforming them. Specifically, I'll call out the 11th graders. They were 14% higher than the previous year's 11th graders. So a nice jump that we want to celebrate there. And then these are our SAT scores from last year in 11th and 12th grade students. Again, 93% versus the state for 69%.
We've made tremendous growth and achievement as a district and aspire to continuously strengthen our performance. Our Year 5 strategic planning goals in English Language Arts are noted here. So we're looking to hit 80% of our students reading on or above grade level, 15% of our MLs to demonstrate typical or high growth from Form A to Form C on Linkit as compared to the spring of 2025. And in grades 6 through 9, the percentage of students scoring in the proficient range on NJSLA will have increased by 25% from our spring 2022 baseline. So there are many, many different inputs that have led us to make progress and reach success in ELA, and I'd just like to highlight some of them. In terms of professional development, we have Instructional Leadership Institute, which is a time in the summer where the administrators get together to do professional learning as a team. We engage in analyzing student data. We implemented last year revised reading units. We have continued our work in Phonics First and onboarding all of our new staff to use this multisensory reading program. We've worked on assessment design at the high school, provided teachers with professional learning and support and coaching in sheltered English instruction to support our multilingual learners. And we've offered through professional development on our half-day PDs something called an Ed Camp model, where teachers get to select and choose a professional learning experience that meets their needs. In addition, we have lots of resources. We have navigator reports through Linkit that provide us with detailed information about student performance, as well as we're stepping into leadership roles, like at the elementary level through our teacher leadership work, and coordinators at the secondary level. And last year, we also used varsity tutors to focus on one-on-one tutoring with our multilingual learners. So the second part of our presentation will cover our math performance for the 24-25 school year. And as you can see here, all of our elementary students outperform the state between 10 and 17%.
And then for secondary math, you'll see some of our scores highlighted here. I want to call out the 6th grade class again. The 6th grade math class last year had their highest passing rate, and it was up 13% from the year before. And then again, across the grades, you'll see, again, outperforming the state. One thing I want to point out, in 8th grade, students have 2 different math classes they can take. So that's why you see there's Math 8, which is like our regular on grade level math class, and then Algebra 1, which is advancing, and 98% of our Algebra 1 8th graders pass the state test. At the high school, you only take the test in 9th grade, and so again, that splits again. Some 9th graders are in Algebra 1, and some 9th graders are in geometry. I do want to call out the geometry 9th graders had 14% increase from the year before, another all-time high, so they did very well. And then you see the state numbers in parentheses. Again, just like before, we have our scores across all grades, and then disaggregated by race and ethnicity, disaggregated by gender, and disaggregated by special program. This is that kind of condensed slide where you have each grade over the last several school years. I won't go through each, but I'll just point out a few. We had a big jump, as you see that 6th grade bar on the far right. That's a big jump for the 6th grade class. And then also the 9th grade geometry students, another big jump from the previous year. And just one thing to note, over the last 4 years, we have 8% more students overall passing the math state assessment. So we're happy to highlight that. And then this is that same chart, but now it's the same students over 2 years. So spring 24 and spring 25. Specifically, the 6th to 7th grade jump was significant here. That's our current 8th grade class. Again, in 11th grade, that's the big testing year. Now you also need to pass a math test to meet your graduation requirement. The 11th graders last spring had an 82% passing rate, which is an all-time high for James Caldwell High School, 10% greater than the previous year. And again, these slides just give you the race and ethnicity breakdowns, the special program breakdowns. I'll quickly go through the PSAT data. Again, the 11th graders increased by 12% their passing rate from the previous year. We're consistently outperforming the state. This slide has our SAT data for 11th and 12th grade students. Here you have our goals for this school year across math, and so you'll see what we're aiming for with our elementary and secondary math students. And then similar to ELA, you have all the resources that we put in. I won't read them all, they're very similar to ELA. A lot of different things that we're spending time and money on. I think one thing just important to call out is just the hard work of the teachers. Like, that's really the success of this is driven by the teachers spending the time to understand the assessments, working with the students putting in the extra effort, and we're happy to celebrate those results. Quickly, I'll go through science. Science is a little bit different. You only take it 3 times over your high school career, 5th, 8th, and 11th grade. None of those are graduation requirements, so you'll see the scores and the passing rates outperforming the state. This slide on the bottom there, that link will give you more information on the science assessment. And then again, similarly, breakdowns of our different levels of achievement by ethnicity, by gender, and by special program. And these are some of the resources we put towards science. Another test that high school students take in the spring are the AP tests. So if you remember AP tests, Those are the tests you take to, if you're in an AP class, to potentially get college credit. And they're scored on a 1 through 5 scale. If you get a 3 or greater, most colleges will accept that for credit. So if you take Calc AB here and you get a 3 on the test and you apply to Rutgers and you say, hey, I got a 3, they'll say, okay, we'll give you credit for that, and you move on. So this is just an overall summary, but the important thing to note is we had our most ever AP testers, our most ever AP tests, and our most ever 3s or greater. So we have the most kids ever getting credit for college classes, and so we're really excited about the work that our AP students did at James Caldwell High School.
Finally, these last slides provide information about achievement on assessments for multilingual learners and students deemed eligible for the Dynamic Learning Assessments, or DLM. So each year, our multilingual learners take the Access test to measure growth in listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Scores range across 6 levels. We had our greatest number and percentage of students passing the test, which means they've reached levels of English proficiency to be eligible to. This slide shows our student performance in each grade band and across the whole district across the last 3 years. You can note the larger section of high scores in the green sections for each of the groups. And here we have Access performance across racial subgroups, disaggregated by gender, and performance of students by programs, including free or reduced lunch and special education. The dynamic learning map is administered to students with significant cognitive disabilities for whom state assessments are not appropriate. Score ranges are referenced here, and individual student reports are mailed home to parents and guardians. So this concludes our annual fall assessment presentation for the 24-25 school year. Please feel free to ask us any questions this evening or reach out to your child's principal if you have any questions. We want to thank the students, staff, Board of Education, families for all of the support that led to this year's growth and achievement.
Can I just say something real quick? I just want to recognize your efforts and the efforts of the teachers, because yeah, I sat in the committee meeting with Terry, and there was just so many great things happening in the district. When we look at our data from a few years ago, it's trending in a great direction, and we recognize that we have room to grow, but it's you guys are doing some really great work. And to our teachers who are attending the professional developments and utilizing the resources and just working with our kids day in and day out, it's showing, and we really appreciate it as a board. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, thank you, guys. And this will be on the website tomorrow?
Yes.
This week,
All right.
yeah.
There's
Excellent.
a recording
Thank you.
as well as a presentation.
Yes.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
I just want to say, having given this presentation for many, many years, kudos to the two of you, because it was well done. And I understand that you've got a voiceover for the presentation that you're going to be posting. So it's not only the ability to look at the slides, but also to hear the same information that both of our directors have presented this evening. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have one more, right? One more.
One more. Yep. All right. So I know we just keep rolling. Okay. So I'm sure, board, you have heard about the HIB self-assessment report every year for a number of years now. For those of you that may not be familiar with what this is, the harassment, intimidation, and bullying law requires schools on an annual basis to perform a self-assessment on 8 indicators, and those indicators are part and parcel of the entire program that's required by that law. So indicators such as HIB programs, approaches, and initiatives, training on HIB policy and procedures, other staff instruction and training, the curriculum and instruction on HIB-related skills, HIB personnel, school-level HIB incident reporting procedure, the HIB investigation procedure, and HIB reporting overall. So we have committees at each of our schools, and we have HIB specialists and our administrators at each school who put all of this information together for their school. That information then goes to the HIB coordinator, who kind of oversees the program for the district, and then it comes to me. And the school reports, I have to go through each one, and I have to make sure that all of the components are properly recorded, and then we have the opportunity to certify. So I've certified all the reports based on the fact that we're doing this presentation this evening. All the schools have reported. And as a district, you're going to see that when this is submitted to the state later on in the year, the state sends back, after they've checked everything, they send back our actual HIB grade. And they let us know whether or not they agree with these self-assessments based on all the data that was provided. And then we're required to post the report at that time on the district website. But rating ourselves, each school's rating, we have an average for HIB programs, approaches, and initiatives. On an average, we have 14 points out of the possible 15 points. Core element 2 is training on HIB policy and procedures. There are 9 possible points, and the district average is 9. So we're doing those things, and you know, every time we rate ourselves, we have to provide the evidence in the reporting before we can provide that score. The other staff instruction and training, out of 15 points, the district has given, you know, all of our schools, our district average is 14 points of the 15. In curriculum and instruction on HIB-related skills, there's a possible 6 points, and we've an average rated at 6 points. The HIB personnel, possible 9 points, our average is 9 points. The incident reporting procedures at the school level, possible points 6, and our average is 6. The HIB investigation procedure, the possible points are 12, and our average is 12. The HIB reporting, the possible points is 6, and we've rated ourselves with an average of 5. So what all that means is that as each school went through their responses to the questions in each of those core areas, that they literally had to count all the trainings, make sure that all the staff understands what the HIB procedures are, make sure that the training of our HIB specialists and also of you know, the parent trainings and the student trainings and the literature that we post and everything on our website, you know, that all gets put into these reports. So overall, they're out of a possible 78 points, our district average is 74, and I think you'll find that once the state comes back with all of that information, that I don't see any reason why the state wouldn't agree with our assessment. And it also shows, you know, we're really trying to be honest with our reporting, that we're not giving ourselves full points for everything. We do recognize that there are always areas of improvement. So, you know, this is to me, I think this says a lot about how the district approaches not only the implementation, but also, you know, is very cognizant of the reality of what we're required to do. And it's, as you know, because we deal with these all the time as far as reports and cases are concerned, that you know, people are not only are we relying on the training we've had, but we're always seeking to improve. So, okay, so that concludes my report for this evening. And
Thank you very much.
Board, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on. There is no president's report tonight.
Renewal of a cooperative sports agreement with West Essex for ice hockey, which we're happy to continue that relationship. A proposal for the design and bid specifications for an elevator at Washington School. The third item was the district's completion and submission of the annual comprehensive maintenance plan and Form M1 to the Department of Education. We also discussed the district's approval and acceptance of $61,686 in emergent capital funds from the New Jersey School Development Authority. And finally, we also discussed and reviewed various school safety measures and programs, as well as possible future enhancements for the district. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No? Thank you.
Okay.
Or you have curriculum?
We do. We have a curriculum and technology committee meeting, and I'm glad you're both still here, so if I say anything wrong, you can correct me. But we met on October 17th, and it was Ms. Jacobs, Ms. Bahudin, Ms. Mandara, Dr. Fernari, Ms. Mack, and myself. And we discussed at first, we've discussed this great report, which we all just heard. We also discussed the half-day professional development that the teachers participated in, which again we heard here as well, which is referred to as the Ed Camp Professional Development. And the teachers had a choice of professional development sessions that very excitingly were largely led by our own staff members. So many thanks to the staff who took time to design those programs to share with their peers. Topics ranged from technology tools, supporting special education and multilingual learners, planning with our students' assessment data, positive behavioral supports for students, and many other sessions. Feedback from this day will help us guide future days. And again, all the directors shared that it was really nice to have so many staff leading these sessions. We also discussed preparing to transition to our Atlas site, which will be available to the public later this year. As part of this transition, our current curriculum is going into Atlas, and we anticipate that a majority of the curriculum will be housed there, and that means that families will be able to go in and click and see what the curriculum looks like as well. All of the NJ school districts are required to administer a field test this fall for students in grades 4 to 12. And this is going to be adaptive test. The field test will not be shared with the districts or with families, but this is going to be a practice run for a new state testing platform that we will use in the spring. All staff are going to be trained, and these tests will be administered the week of November 10th. So I believe the way that this really goes is that the adaptive format will be that as students are taking the test, as they get some questions right, the next set of questions will become harder. And if they're struggling with some questions, they will continue to support them and probably have some easier questions. In talking with our special services director, we discussed that many of our paraprofessional staff have been provided with increased opportunities for training and professional development. Particularly, we have a program called the Inclusive Para online training course, which is flexible, it's self-paced, it offers up to 35 hours for paraprofessionals to engage in modules that will help them with tools and confidence in order to better support our students with special needs. We have an elementary math intervention update, which we're excited to share. This intervention position will support students in our upper grade classrooms at the elementary level across all 4 schools using a push-in model. This teacher will coordinate with classroom teachers and provide targeted supports to students with math, within their math or their IDA block. Additionally, we have a GCMS teachers will be meeting with students during their elective periods, and they're going to be supporting them with ELA and math. So the students have been identified and their parents have confirmed this, and this position is going to be supported through one of our Title I grants. And finally, feedback from some of the summer assignments, which we had talked about at a prior board meeting. Elementary leaders are going to be meeting together to plan in the spring optional summer assignments for students. So teachers will be working across the district together to create a set of resources that will be available to families to support and reinforce and extend learning opportunities through the summertime. Our next meeting is November 3rd, and thank you for listening to all of that. Any questions?
Any questions? No? All right. Thank you, Terry. And we did policy and personnel last time. Good. All right. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Can we have an approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Yes.
For the minute.
And a second?
I'll second.
Brian, can you take the roll?
Yes, Ms. DiMartini,
Yes.
Ms. Landolfi Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Diambola,
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
All right. All right, now we're going to move on to public comments. This is going to be on agenda items only. So public participation shall be governed by the following. Participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface their comments by an announcement of their name and address. Statements are to be limited to 3-minute duration. Participants may speak no more than once on the same topic until all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard, and all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. Boards use the public comment period of the meeting as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns, but not to debate issues or enter into a question and answer session or a cross-examination between the public and individual members. Be aware that not all issues brought before the board meeting will be resolved that evening. Boards may respond to public comments by seeking additional information or by delegating the authority to investigate the issue to the superintendent or his or her designee. The presiding officer may interrupt, warn, and/or terminate a participant's comments if they exceed the allotted time and or objectively obscene. Participants may be civilly liable for any obscene, defamatory, or slanderous statements made during public comment. Do we have any comments on our agenda? No? All right, so we are going to move along. Curriculum and technology.
Should have earmarked my place, sorry.
Can I still,
Yeah, you're asking for a motion.
can I still do it for me?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Okay, no, I'm good. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, motion to approve items A through H under curriculum and technology on this evening's agenda.
And the second?
I'll second.
Brian, can you take the
Ms. DiMartini,
Yes.
Ms. Landolfi Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Diambola.
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
Can I still do personnel?
Yes.
Yes. Upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools, motion to approve items A through L under certificated staff and items A through D under non-certificated staff in this personnel on this evening's agenda. Can I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Ms. DiMartini,
Yes.
Ms. Landolfi Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Mack,
Yes to all, but I'm abstaining from K, please.
okay, noted. Mr. Diambola.
Yes.
All right, 4-0, motion carried.
Finance.
Okay. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, motions to approve items A through O under finance and item A under facilities on this evening's agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
Second was
Brian?
Ms. DiMartini,
Yes.
Ms. Landolfi Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Diambola.
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
And policy.
Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, motion to approve items A and B under policy on this evening's agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
Brian,
Okay,
can you
Ms.
take the
DiMartini,
Yes.
Ms. Landolfi Jefferson,
Yes.
Ms. Mack,
Yes.
Mr. Diambola.
Yes.
4-0, motion carried.
All right, and then, all right, now we're going to take comments on anything. So public comments, it's the same thing. Public participation shall be governed by the following. Participants may be recognized by the presiding officer and must preface comments by an announcement of their name and address. Statements are to be limited to 3 minutes duration. Participants may speak no more than once on the same topic until all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard, and all statements shall be directed to the presiding officer. Boards use the public comment period of the meeting as an opportunity to listen to citizen concerns, but not to debate issues or enter into a question and answer session or a cross-examination between public and individual members. Be aware that not all issues brought before the board meeting will be resolved that evening. Boards may respond to public comments by seeking additional information or delegating the authority to investigate the issue to the superintendent or his or her designee. The presiding officer may interrupt, warn, and/or terminate a participant's comments if it exceeds the allotted time or is objectively obscene. Participants may be civilly liable for any obscene, defamatory, or slanderous statements made during public comments. With that being said, does anybody have a question or comment on anything?
Glenn Roselle, 110 Knoll Terrace, West Caldwell. Recently in the newspapers, I've seen a bunch of local school boards and districts, and I won't mention their names, have gotten in severe financial distress. How's this board going to make sure that we don't find ourselves in that same hole? Because some of this has been brewing for a while. It just didn't happen for one budget. This was budget after budget going into the red. I mean, we need things like the new field house, and there's buildings that need to be repaired. But some of these, I mean, like $9 million out of whack. So how's the school board going to assure the citizens that that's not going to happen to us within reason?
Dr. Fenari or
Sure.
Brian, would you like to?
I think we can both kind of tag team on this. So one of the first things that that we are charged to do as administration of a school district, and I know I'm only here for the year, but I can say that as I came into this district, you know, I quickly became very confident in Mr. McCarthy's abilities as a business administrator, in that we have not only our internal mechanisms, but we also have external mechanisms that we are responsible to, and that's mainly the Department of Education. There are things such as our mid-year budget review. So mid-year, every year, we have to go and justify how we're spending our dollars, and also the county business administrator asks us questions about what they see in our fiscal statements. We also have an annual audit, and the audit is intended to, as with any audit, is intended to make sure that we are adhering to the law, that we are adhering to all of the requirements of not only the school educational program laws and requirements, but also those of the fiscal. So and I know was it the OMB circular, which changed its name? CAFRA changed its name.
The CAFR to the ACFR.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So, you know, there are many governing documents, laws, and policies and regulations that we have to make sure that we are, and we have to demonstrate that we're being responsible. So we're a public entity, so our books are really an open set of documents. Every month, we have financial reports that we have as part of our board agendas, and they can be scrutinized by the public. They can be scrutinized, obviously, by our Board of Education. We have a Finance and Facilities Committee that oversees that work. So if all of those mechanisms are working properly, and we're all paying attention to where the dollars are going they going to the things that we say they're going to? For example, when I was speaking earlier about the referendum money, and that it can only be spent on a specific project, right? So with all of that, in order for us to keep the trust, the public trust of this community and these communities with Caldwell and West Caldwell together, you know, we have to come before you every single month and provide those financial documents. So I'm not commenting on what other districts do. There are some circumstances that sometimes a district finds themselves in that are not of their own making. But if we are being very attentive to the way we're spending our dollars and not overextending ourselves, then, you know, I believe that we're in the right place. And I'm hoping that with all of that transparency that we can also demonstrate to our communities that we're doing those things. Brian, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, thank you. So another thing that I've always done since I've been in this business, and it was funny that some people didn't do this, I've always done a 5-year plan and shown the board's 5 years projections based on current revenue and expense growth based on, say, health benefits or teacher salaries. And so, as you know, many school districts in the state, we're all in the same boat. None of the revenue structure is sustainable. So we're acutely aware of what's coming down the pike. So we're going to have to maybe ask for more taxes or cut expenses in the future, but we're aware of what is in front of us. So nothing should come to a surprise to the board. I tell them all the time what I'm seeing. We make decisions based on these, forward forecasts. So there'll be no surprises. Everyone will be very aware of where we are. So right now,
Thank you.
we're pretty solid.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Hi, Liz Hart, 149 Ravine. So actually to follow up on that gentleman's question, and Brian, Mr. McCarthy, sorry. You mentioned potentially raising taxes, right? I'm assuming, and actually I don't want to assume, right? What I want to basically ask is with the potential for this current administration's disbanding of the Department of Education and how that could impact our funding. So I know that there was the schedule put on the agenda as far as, planning for the budget for the upcoming year. So are we incorporating into that budget a worst case scenario should we not receive any funding from the government?
At this point, we're just starting, we're just really started the budget cycle.
Right.
We do receive federal funding, so we get ESEA, which is used to be called Title I, or No Child Left Behind. It's been rebranded a couple times. We get that money. We do depend on that. To a greater extent, we also get funding from the IDEA, and that program is much more of an impact if we should lose it from the federal DOE. So at this point, I'm not hearing anything from the state that those programs are going to be cut. We don't have our heads in the sand, so we know what's going on. So we're going to be as conservative as we can. We do fortunately have other resources that we could tap into. We have other restricted reserves. We have emergency reserves under the situation where we have some real adverse outcomes. I do think we have resources where we could get through it at this point. But clearly, if we have some of the funding that's pulled, it's going to impact our district. It'll impact all New Jersey school districts. So yeah, I always go conservative.
Okay, and then should, again, worst case scenario, the funding get pulled, I believe the cap, right, that we are allowed to increase on residents for taxes is capped at 2 point whatever that percentage is. How would we be able to make up that difference if, we can't use all the reserve and it requires more than that? Is that like a law that has to get passed? Like, I don't know. How does that work?
Dr. Farr?
Yeah, so those are great questions. And I'm not going to pretend that that would be a painless scenario, but based on the way that this district has structured its funding and has structured its reserves, there's you don't put all your eggs in one basket. Let me try and be very plain about that. So there are some funds that we receive from the government that are not budgeted for, because it's almost like unanticipated revenue. Because if we anticipate that we're going to get that particular revenue, and we don't get it, or we get half of it, or a third of it, then we're automatically in a hole. So when Mr. McCarthy's talking about budgeting conservatively, we don't budget all of that funding. The extraordinary aid.
Yes.
Some of the other funding that we receive, for example, the ESEA funds, the Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV that we receive are not so high, they're not significant in a manner that if we didn't get some of that funding, it would break the bank. Okay. So we plan for, and this is one of the reasons why, and we agree completely on this. You never put staff on, a pensionable staff member in a grant, because you never know if that grant is going to be available to you the next year. So what we try to do with those titles is use the money for single, for one-time expense, right? Buying materials for a program that maybe we need to, I don't want to get too technically crazy, but Title I is a grant for students who struggle with learning, right? So, and there are rules around what you can buy, when you can buy it, and if you buy it with local funds, you have to wait a certain number of years before you can buy it through the grant again. You know, there's all of that. So it's not money that we rely on solely to fund certain things. If it were not to, you know, if we weren't going to get that grant next year, we have what, 107,000 roughly?
Yeah.
In Title I. So
Yes.
it's not so large an amount that we couldn't figure out another way to make that happen if the grant went away, right? I think where we get a lot of benefit, you know, a larger dollar amount benefit is in the IDEA grant, which is special education funding, because that's what we use primarily for tuitions. And, you know, most districts fund tuitions from that pool because we know that those services for students are very expensive. So, you know, it would be a deep discussion, I think, about, you know, with some of that. That's why it's not a very straightforward response. But we have plans for worst case scenarios built into the budget already.
Okay. And then when would we find out? Well, you wouldn't know, right? Like whether or not the funding. So I know you have to do your submissions, right? So could they potentially pull the funding after your submissions, or this is just, we have no idea?
We have, well, yeah, and that's I would need my crystal ball for that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have one more question, if I may.
Yeah.
So, are we going to resume the interviewing for the full-time, the permanent superintendent position? Is that something that you can share?
Well, now that we kind of got school started and, you know, we're working on the referendum, we will sit down as a board and kind of map out that timeline. And as soon as we all talk about it, we will definitely report it back out to the public to know what our plan or know what the process is going to be.
Okay. So it's going to be a different process than what the first process was?
Not so much a different process, but it may to report out the timeline. So this way we know.
Okay.
So this way everybody would know kind of what we're thinking about.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Dambola?
Anybody other questions?
Yeah, just before I
Yeah.
did want to make one announcement. So on November 5th, there's going to be a special meeting held at Jefferson Elementary School to hopefully appoint the new principal, who will be starting in January. So you know, I wanted to make sure. In the past, I've said November 3rd, but we just made an adjustment about a week ago, I think, right, in the date. So it is actually going to be on November 5th. At 7 at Jefferson. So if you are a member of that Jefferson community or a member of the community at large that want to be there to be at that meeting to support the school and its new principal, then please join us.
Thank you. All right. If there is no other questions, I would ask for a motion to enter our public meeting and enter executive session.
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Okay,
Ryan?
all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All against, nay. Any abstentions? Motion carried.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.